You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
This is the Daniel Monday Night Community Show on demand through YouTube. Thank you very much for choosing to listen to us through this method. If you'd like to keep up to date with when I add new interviews, then subscribe to this channel. Malcolm, it's great to have you along with us. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, hello Daniel, nice to be here.
So firstly, tell our listeners the title of the book.
Well, the book is called The Island Gang Narratives. It's a mystery with a element of science fiction. It's a novella-sized book, which is to do with the amount of words to make the story. But I find that a book of that size just keeps the main interest going and doesn't deviate. And I hope if anybody would like to buy a copy that they would enjoy it.
So what is the story about?
And it's based around a 10-year-old boy called Charlie Hall who disappeared during World War II, and also about a set of children's books called The Island Gang, and they were written in the late 1940s, early 1950s. And the Island Gang were a group of children who met up each year on their holidays here on the Isle of Sheppey, and they had various adventures. What you could perhaps say the Swallows and Amazons versus the famous five on the Isle of Sheppey, perhaps. A local newspaper reporter, he notices a memoriam in the obituaries page to this young boy, and he wonders whether there's some sort of story, and he goes off to investigate it, and he discovers the link between Charlie Hall and these books, and he notices in the books there are errors relating to the Isle of Sheppey. And as he follows up on these errors, he gradually discovers the mystery of what happened to the boy, plus several other bits and pieces. And he puts himself in danger as he discovers more and more, and in fact he discovers a mystery stranger than anything that he could have perhaps imagined. There's a neat twist right at the end.
Why did you come up with the idea?
That came along, the idea via Belle Austin. Yourself and the listeners may well know Belle from the Sheerness Times-Guardian and her Memory Lane column. And she and I, we used to be members of a quiz team, the Flying Squad. And we used to go each Thursday to the quizzes at the Abbey Motel. And she happened to say to me one evening, I'm going along to visit a man who's put a memoriam into the local paper for a friend of his who died during the war. And I thought, that sounds interesting. Anyway, the following week, I said to him, well, how did you get on with your interview? And she said, well, actually, it wasn't that much of a story to it. It was a fact that the chap was just remembering a friend of his who had died. He was in the aeroplanes on Coastal Command, I think you call it, the bombers, and he had been killed, and he was just remembering his friend. But I started to think to myself, but what if there had been a story there? What could it be? And I initially looked into wartime and bombing type stories, but I'm not really a fan of wartime stories, and I'm not that well up in sort of direct history of the World War. And so I tried to look at another angle, and various options came along until the idea that I ended with, suddenly it started developing, and the more I added to it, the more it seemed reasonable, and that's what ended up as the Island Gang.
So you from the island yourself?
Actually, I'm not, no. I have to confess that I'm not from the island. I've lived here now for about 12 or 13 years, but do you know, I really love the island, Daniel. I really love its history. I love the place. There's some lovely walks and some lovely beaches, and I really love it. I mean, as a child, I always remember coming over with my dad bringing us over as family to Sheerness. And the big memory as a real youngster was coming over the old bridge, the old wooden rickety bridge, and it reminded me of the old children's little song about the three billy goats gruff going over the wooden bridge. So there were often visits to the beach. I later on I worked for Radio Rentals, and although I worked in Sittingbourne and I lived in Sittingbourne, we quite often came over to the island to help the lads out or to stand in if any of them weren't there. So quite a bit of work on the island. During 1987 to 1991, I worked for a little while at the docks, and so there's always been that little bit of a link to the island for me.
So you wanted it set on the island then?
Sorry?
So that it had to be on the island then, really?
To be honest, the gang of children could have been from any seaside or any holiday resort, but as I said, the island's such a lovely place, and it gets some rotten reports. I mean, it's the butt of jokes at various pantomimes, and it shouldn't be. And I thought a lot of London children come to the island, to the Isle of Sheppey, so no, the Isle of Sheppey is going to be the base. And so it also gave me the title of the Island Gang. So the small group of children became the Island Gang. And although the story itself, it starts in Wiltshire and it travels on to Yorkshire, the main base is here on the Isle of Sheppey, and I'm pleased that it is.
We're talking to Malcolm. We're talking to him all about the book he's written recently. He's a local author, and I was wondering next, how did you come to get the book published?
That was a little bit by chance. As I said, I wrote this about 3 years ago, and I initially printed off a few copies. I passed it around one or two friends who sort of all came back and said, that's pretty good, you ought to do something with it. And so I had a look, but I really had no idea what. I'd never sort of really got into publishing and that before. Looked on the internet, brought some writing magazines, and it all involved doing lots of copies and sending it out to publishers and all this sort of thing. And also you can do self-publishing, and reading up on that looked just as complicated to me. So really I didn't do anything with it. It just lay dormant in my computer. And then a few months ago, I was at the Criterion Music Hall, the Heritage Museum at Bluetown, because I worked there once a week voluntarily. And a chap walked in, and I thought to myself, I recognise you, I know you from somewhere. And I thought, I used to work with you at Westland School. And I went over and introduced myself, and he remembered me. And that was James Apps. And speaking as we did about some reminiscing about Westlands, a little bit, what are we doing now? And I said, well, I'm retired, I'm just doing lots of bits and pieces. And he said, yeah, he's retired, but him and his friend Peter were doing a bit of book publishing. And he introduced me to this Peter, and I sort of said within the conversation, I've written a book. And you could almost see on both their faces go, oh, God, another one. So Peter said, well, email me a copy and I'll have a look. It took 2 or 3 weeks for me to pluck up the courage, because I thought, well, is it any good or whatever? So, but I did. I emailed Peter, and a couple of days later, I got an email back to say I'm hooked, and it all went from there, really. It went through a little bit of backwards and forwards because they edited it for me. It's made me realise how bad I was at English language and English grammar, but they edited it through, and then backwards and forwards in a few ideas, few changes, ideas they had. Some I agreed, some I didn't, and some of mine they didn't agree, and some they did. So we had a bit of bandying backwards and forwards. But then as beginning of December, it all went ahead, and here it is, one book.
Sounds quite a lot to you, but it sounds like an enjoyable process to sort of getting it edited and ready to be published.
For me, very exciting. I mean, Peter would sort of email bits to me, and I'd go, yeah, come on, let's go with it. And then he would come back with other bits that I thought, it must have been really, really routine to him. We'd now do this and we'd now do it. But to me, so exciting, yeah. And I was just over the moon when it was finished.
I bet you're glad you did it now.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's one of the things I wanted to do on a sort of bucket list basis. Not that I've got a sort of direct bucket list written down, but the things as you go through life, you think, I really want to do this, or I really want to do that. And this was one of the things. And I've done it now. I'm very pleased.
I think you're going to just read us a couple of bits. You're going to start off with this first bit.
Yes. Now, this is from early on in the book. And it's Charlie Hall has disappeared. And obviously there's a few concerns going around. Air Commodore Theobald looked towards the scientist. So, Simon, you are now positive that the boy Charlie did go? Yes. Is he alive? And if so, where is he? On both accounts, I'm afraid that I don't know, was all Simon Eldridge could add. Turning towards Lieutenant General Hempstead. Do we have anyone looking for him then? The Air Commander asked. As you know, gentlemen, everything is on hold at the moment, but yes, we are searching for him. But unfortunately, it will be like searching for a needle in a haystack, and in this case, a bloody great big haystack. Well, no matter how big the haystack, we must still keep trying to find that needle.
We're hearing a few sections from the book that we've been talking to him all about.
Yes, indeed. So another section that I'd just like to read, and this is from the moment that the local newspaper reporter meets the author of the children's books. She led Jack along a short corridor and stopped outside of a closed door. Mr. Whittle is very ill. He sleeps most of the time, so you may not get any information at all. In fact, he might not even know you are here. I'll call back in a short while, and if I think he is at all stressed, you will leave immediately. Is that understood, Mr. Duggan? Yes, matron, and thank you very much for this opportunity. She opened the door, and Jack followed her into the room, eager to catch his first glimpse of Ernest William Whittle. In a large, comfortable bed lay a frail, white-haired man. Clean, crisp covers were pulled up to his neck, and his eyes were closed. He was, as the matron said he would be, fast asleep. Ernie, dear, there's a Mr. Duggan here to see you. He's come a long way to ask you about family. She gestured Jack towards a chair. As I told you, Mr. Duggan, he's asleep. I'll be back in a little while. Thank you again for this chance, matron. After she had left and closed the door, Jack pulled the chair up closer to the bed. Ernest Whittle's eyes remained closed, and there was no sign at all of any realization that there was someone in the room. Jack sat down, then leaned gently across and spoke quietly to the old man. Hello, Mr. Whittle. My name is Jack Duggan, and I'm afraid I've told a few untruths, because I'm not here to talk about family. Still, there was no change in the old man's expression. I've come here from the Isle of Sheppey. I'm also a great fan of your books, The Island Gang, and I wanted to ask you about them. Jack took a little gamble. I just wondered if there might be a connection between the two, and he sat back in a chair. Slowly, a smile spread across the frail old face, and his eyes opened. The old man struggled to pull himself up in the bed and to turn towards Jack. Mr. Duggan, I have waited a very long time for you to come. A look of total surprise crossed Jack's face. I'm sorry, Mr. Whittle, but how could you possibly know that I would be coming? Because I invited you, many years ago.
So what we're doing at the moment is just hearing a few little sections from that book.
Okay, this is just a small piece, and it's a little bit further into the story, but as of yet, Jack Duggan, the newspaper reporter, has not really found anything out about the mystery. All he's done is been able to find the author of the children's books. And although he's talked to him for a while, still not been told anything that might be interesting. As I told you, Jack, the story I have to tell is totally unbelievable, and I swear on anything you want me to swear on, it is the absolute truth. But I know that if I were to tell you now, you would just think that I was an insane old man who had lost his marbles. Well, I can assure you that my marble tin is full to overflowing, Jack, so to help you believe, I need you to do something for me. Jack exhaled sharply. What? Mr. Druggan, this is extremely serious. If you're not up to the task, you might just as well leave now, Ernie Whittle said in an abrupt voice, and then added in a more gentle tone, Trust me, please, Jack, I need you to believe. OK, what do you want me to do? Settle yourself into somewhere comfortable, and then have a relaxing evening reading my books. He stared hard at Jack. But do not read them as a child. You must read them as an adult. Sorry, how do I read them as an adult? Do not read the story. Read the words. The two men looked into each other's eyes. Jack to see if the old man was just plain crazy, but Ernie wanted to see whether Jack Duggan was starting to believe enough to go and study the books, or whether he would simply leave the room and never come back.
Well, Malcolm, if our listeners, of course, would like to find out more and read that book, I was hoping you could let us know where it is available.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's available on Amazon. You can buy it in book form for £4.81. But you can also buy it in Kindle ebook form, and that's £2.40. I have a few copies of the books now for myself, and some of those will be held at the Heritage Centre at Bluetown, where people can buy the books. And also, I'm hoping a little bit later that may well be held some at the Rose Centre in Rose Street. The books cost $4.99 directly from me. There will be on the 17th of January at the Heritage Centre. I will be doing a book signing. So if anybody wanted to come down and purchase a copy of the book, I will gladly sign it for them. In fact, actually, on a Tuesday, I do a regular Tuesday down at the Heritage Centre. So if you aren't able to make the 17th of January, come down any Tuesday and I'll be there, and the same applies. I'll gladly sign the book for you. So that at the moment is the various ways you can actually get hold of the book.
Well, Malcolm, I'd like to thank you very much for coming along and letting our listeners know all about the story, how you got on writing, and also reading us some little bits as well.
That's okay. I'm really pleased. It allows me to advertise my story a little bit, and I hope I've had quite a good response so far, so I'm hoping that more people will get the book and enjoy the story. Thank you, Daniel.